Good morning. Thank you for coming to the press briefing. Attending the press briefing, we have Mr. John Lee, Chief Executive, Mr. Eric Chan, Chief Secretary for Administration, Mr. Chris Tang, Secretary for Security, Professor Lo Chung Mao, Secretary for Health, Secretary for Transport and Logistics, Mr. Lam Sai Hong, and also Dr. Choi Yok Lin, Secretary for Education. The Chief Executive will say a few words, and then the other secretaries and directors also say a few words, and then they will take questions from the floor. Please limit yourself to 2 questions each. Now, over to the Chief Executive. Good morning. I now announce that Hong Kong and the mainland will, from the 6th of February, that is next Monday, resume normal travel fully. That means, 1, all boundary crossing points will no longer have a cap on the daily number of passengers, travelers. There is no need to make booking. You can go freely across the BCP. And secondly, we will abolish the PCR test arrangement. There is no longer any need to do PCR test or any other test. So you could, travel anytime as you wish. Thirdly, all boundary crossing points will be reopened. That means we will open in addition the Lau Wu BCP, Hung Yuen Wai Len Tong BCP, and also the Lok Ma Chau Huang Gang BCP. As for the cargo transportation service for the Shuttlecock BCP, it will also be resumed. And then we will also abolish the requirement for RAT for arrivals from Macau to Hong Kong. In other words, people from Macau could, people between Hong Kong and Macau could travel freely anytime as they wish. As for overseas travel arrangement, on the same day, non-Hong Kong residents will no longer have to show proof of vaccination. That means for overseas travelers who have not been vaccinated, they could travel to Hong Kong. For arrivals from overseas and Taiwan, there is the RAT requirement. Because we will have full resumption of normal travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. There will be huge number of people crossing the boundaries, so we want to keep risk under control. So therefore, we will still keep the RAT requirement for some time so we could observe the development, and then we review the policy. Starting from the 8th of January, we started orderly resumption of normal travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. Families were able to be reunited, and business, retail, catering, and many other sectors have been revitalized. We have seen vibrant economic activities. People have been much happier since. And starting from next Monday, the 6th of February, there will be full resumption of normal travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. That means that will further promote exchanges between people and also promote economic activities. And yesterday, we launched a major global publicity campaign, Hello Hong Kong. In 2023, Hong Kong will become even more vibrant, and there will be more activities in the community, and there will be more happiness among the people. The mainland will also resume travel group arrangement. The relevant Culture and Tourism Bureau of the mainland will be in communication with the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau as soon as possible so they could resume the group travel to Hong Kong. I'm grateful to the State Council, the Health Commission, and also the Guangdong provincial governments and Shenzhen municipal governments for their support and for doing much to prepare for the resumption of travel. I would also like to thank all colleagues at the BCPs for making much preparation for the resumption. There are especially the colleagues of the coordination group on resumption of normal travel have worked diligently to make this possible. And now I have fulfilled my pledge in my election manifesto as I ran for the election of the chief executive. I'm able to now see the resumption of normal travel. So I'm really happy. Now I invite the chief secretary for administration and other directors bureau to tell you more about the work and arrangement. Good morning, members of the public and the media. Now, as the chief executive pointed out, we have the HKSRG government has had discussions with the central authorities, the Guangdong provincial government and the Shenzhen municipal government, and we will start full resumption of normal travel from next Monday. Now, after the chief executive returned from Beijing at the end of the year and brought back news of resumption of travel, so the coordination group on resumption of normal travel was set up, and we worked ceaselessly to work towards the ultimate goal of a full resumption of travel. So we've been working in an orderly manner. Now, the first phase of resumption started on the travel resumption started on the 8th of January. Since then, we have kept in close discussion and communication with the relevant authorities on the mainland. We have also made adjustments and responded to different needs as necessary. For example, we have stepped up the dissemination of information, and also because of the Chinese New Year, there was a strong demand for travel quotas. So we have increased the quota arrangement during the Chinese New Year. And for children under the age of 3, there's no need for them to undergo PCR tests. And also, we have increased the number of southbound and northbound tickets of the express rail service. And then from the 8th of January to yesterday, the 2nd of February, 770,000 people traveled northwards to the mainland, and some 700,000 people traveled south to Hong Kong. They made use of the various opened BCPs, and that's helped to foster exchanges between the two places. We have reviewed the operation of the first phase of travel resumption, and we've also considered all risk factors. We believe we now have the condition to resume full travel. I'd like to highlight a few points. Firstly, starting from the 6th of February, all boundary cross control points will be reopened, and there will be no longer a daily quota. As for the Lowu BCP, Hangyun Lantong BCP, and the Lok Ma Chau BCP will be open. And for the Sha Tau Kwok BCP, cargo services will resume too. These are the new BCPs to be opened. As for the other existing BCPs already in operation, they will remain in operation as usual. And then for all the operational BCPs, and then for those going via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge or the newly reopened land BCPs, of all travelers no longer need to make online booking in advance. The Guangdong and other mainland authorities and us, we will continue to step up our rehearsal drills and to make sure that we are fully prepared and all the BCPs will operate smoothly when they open. And then the coordination group will continue to coordinate with the operators of different transport services, both such as land, sea, and air travel services, to make sure everything is in order. In a moment, the Secretary for Transport and Logistics and the Secretary will be giving you more details about the travel arrangement or transportation arrangement. And then second point, starting from the 6th of February, all persons traveling to and from between the Hong Kong mainland will no longer have to do a PCR test within 48 hours of travel. Because the epidemic is now under control, we believe we are in the position to relax the testing requirement to facilitate travel between Hong Kong and the mainland as far as possible. As for those as for transit travelers, that is for those who are in transit or who have been overseas, including Taiwan, 7 days before traveling between Hong Kong and mainland, they will still have to produce a PCR test result within 48 hours of travel. As for those aged under 3, they will still be exempted. In a moment, the Secretary for Health will give you the medical justification for this relaxed arrangement. And then starting from the third point, starting from the 8th of February, note it's the 8th of February, there will be orderly resumption of travel by cross-boundary students to come back for face-to-face classes. The arrangement will be in 2 phases. Firstly, from the 8th of February, we will cover secondary students, and starting from the 22nd of February, the arrangement will extend to primary school students, kindergarten students, also special school students. The Education Bureau decides to resume cross-boundary travel for students in 2 phases because we have to consider whether children are able to take care of themselves and also the relevant support services such as cross-boundary bus services and so on. We want to make sure that students are able to resume face-to-face classes in a safe and convenient manner. Education Bureau will continue to liaise closely with the school bus operators to make sure there is suitable support for them. In a moment, the Secretary for Education will be giving you more details about the class resumption arrangement. On the whole, I will continue to lead the coordination on resumption of normal travel, and with the Guangdong provincial government and the Shenzhen municipal government and all other relevant authorities, will keep in close communication. At the beginning of the year, I have proposed that there should be 4 important points to bear in mind as we resume cruise travel, and we will make sure that happens. Thank you. Secretary for Security. Good morning. I will be talking about some arrangement at the BCPs. As the Chief Executive and Chief Secretary pointed out, starting from the 6th of February, we will be opening up more BCPs. So all BCPs will be open. That includes the Lo Wu, Lantong, Heng Yun Wei, Lok Ma Chau, Huang Gang, and also Shuttlecock BCPs. This will be fully reopened. And then the opening hours will be the same as before the pandemic. That is for Lo Wu, it will be open from 6:30 a.m. to midnight. Huang Kwang, Lok Ma Chau, they will remain open 24 hours as before. As for the Lantong Heng Yu Wei BCP, it will be open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. All clearance services, for example, if certain BCPs allow private car clearance, such services will be resumed too. As for the Shuttlecock BCP, cargo services will be resumed. Initially, we will allow cars transporting coffins to park to first, and the opening hours will be from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. After full resumption of travel, all BCPs no longer have any online booking arrangement, and travelers will no longer need to make a booking in advance to travel between Hong Kong and the mainland. And then there is also no need to produce PCR test result within 48 hours of travel. Now, the State Council has arrangement or requirement in relation to joint infection and prevention control. That is, so for those who have stayed overseas or in Taiwan within 7 days of travel, they will still have to produce a negative result of PCR test within that's within 48 hours of travel. And then they have to go through a special lane, and they have to make declaration of the results. Now, the SAR government and general public have been longing for full resumption of travel, and we and the bureau, my bureau, and the discipline services will make all necessary preparation to ensure there is smooth resumption of travel. And then we will deploy sufficient manpower at the various BCPs to make sure that immigration and clearance services will be provided smoothly. The Immigration Department, the Customs, the Excise will work with the Education Bureau, the Transport Department, and the MTR to carry out drills. Actually, they've carried out drills on the 1st of February. They will make sure that travel will be resumed in a safe, orderly, and efficient manner. And then the relevant departments will work together with the Immigration Department, Transport Department, make sure everything is in order. And there is a joint command center. If necessary, we'll respond proactively, make sure traffic and transport remain fine. We want to make sure that travelers are able to pass the BCP in a quick and safe and efficient manner. I'd like to make a number of reminders. First, the Lantang Hangyun Wai BCP started cargo services in August. For the first time, we are providing passenger clearance services. Members of the public could make use of public transport services or private cars, or they could use the a pedestrian bypass to get to the BCP. There are also car parks at the BCP for travelers going to the east of Shenzhen and Guangdong. You could make use of this brand new BCP at Hangyun Wai. Second point, the Lowu BCP will resume full services from the 6th of February. Now, there are improvement works being carried out at the Lowu BCP, so it may affect the traveling time. If you make use of the Lowu BCP, I would suggest that you allow more time. Or you could also consider using other BCPs, such as the Lok Ma Chau Spur line BCP. Third point, for the Lok Ma Chau Hong Kong BCP, now there is redevelopment of the Hong Kong BCP. The old Hong Kong clearance building has been demolished, so the Shenzhen government has set up a temporary BCP on the Hong Kong side nearby. So clearance services should not be affected, but maybe you're not familiar with the Hong Kong clearance facility, so again, I would suggest that you allow more time for your travel. Now, we have to comply with the customs requirements on the Shenzhen side. So for travelers going to Shenzhen, you should still go to the website of the Shenzhen authorities to make registration in advance. And so you could make your health declaration in advance, and then you don't need to make the health declaration at the BCP. That will speed up the clearance. And also, if you only do the scan the code and so on at the BCP, it may lead to congestion. So we would like to remind the public to complete all declaration beforehand if you travel to the mainland. So that's all from me. Now I'll pass on to Mr. Lam Sai Hong.
Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Thank you, Chief Executive. Good morning, members of the public and media friends. I will talk about the transportation arrangements after the full resumption of cross-boundary travel. Starting next Monday, all boundary control points will resume full operation. The Bureau and the Transport Departments have liaised with public transport operators to ensure that there is sufficient transportation services to take travelers to and from the boundary control points during the operating hours. With the removal of the pre-departure PCR test requirements and also the lifting of the prescribed quota for passengers, we expect a huge surge in traveling demand. The Emergency and Accident Coordination Center of the Transport Department will operate at the maximum capacity and also liaise with franchise bus operators and the MTR company to monitor the transport situation. When necessary, we will enhance transportation services as BCPs, and we will also arrange for extra manpower to serve passengers. Concerning the newly reopened boundary control points, like the Secretary for Security mentioned, there is work in progress as the Lowu control points. It may lengthen the waiting time for customs clearance. we have helped the MTRC to make preparation for resumption of operation of the Longwu control points. Depending on the passenger volume, we will adjust the number of departures to divert travelers' flow. And also, we will remind travelers of issues before crossing the boundary control points, and we will also advise passengers to make use of other border control points to cross the border. Now, for the Heyuan Liantang control point, this is the first time that passengers can cross the boundary control points after its opening. Travelers can make use of taxis, public franchise buses, and also public minibuses, and also travelers can drive private cars and also use the dedicated channel to go through custom clearance. And also, cross-boundary drivers with the regular monthly quota can also make use of the quota to cross the boundary. The Transport Department is going to upload the relevant information on our website concerning the Huanggang Longmanzhou control point. It will resume the Huanggang bus, which run 24 hours a day, will resume like before the epidemic, as well as other means of transport. Concerning the information on transport services for crossing the BCPs, we will upload the information and schedule on our website. And also, we will upload the information on our e-mobility app, as well as disseminate the information to media outlets so that travelers will be familiar with the arrangements. Secretary for Health, please. Thank you, Chief Executive. Good morning, members of the public and media friends. The CE and the Chief Secretary for Administration has announced the arrangements of full resumption of cross-boundary travel with the mainland. It includes cancelling the pre-departure PCR test requirements. However, for northbound travelers, the RAT test will still be required. And also, Macau travelers, we don't have to do a RAT test before coming to Hong Kong. And also, overseas travelers will not have to present a vaccination record before coming to Hong Kong. Now, I would like to report to you the latest developments of the epidemic in Hong Kong, as well as the risk assessments, as well as emergency response measures after the full resumption of cross-boundary travel. After 3 years, we have entered a new stage of the epidemic, and our control model has evolved. Starting the 30th of January this year, we have cancelled the issuance of isolation order to patients. And also, the Health Ministry of the Central People's Government has announced that the epidemic has entered a low infection level, and it is on a steady trend of decline. Starting the 8th of January, after we implemented the first phase of resumption of cross-boundary travel with the mainland, we have observed the following. First, between the 8th of January and the 29th of January, the number of confirmed cases in Hong Kong has dropped from 14,000 per day to 3,000 per day. That is an 80% drop. It shows that since the first phase resumption of cross-boundary travel, the epidemic situation has not worsened. On the contrary, the number of confirmed cases has dropped. And also, from our sewage surveillance, it shows that the per capita viral load has dropped from 330,000 units to by 90% to some 20,000 units. It wasn't adversely affected by the first stage of resumption. And also, the imported case ratio accounts for only 2.6% of our total number of confirmed cases. Among the imported cases, mainland cases only accounts for 16%. It shows that mainland travelers have a lower risk. In terms of public health service, the number of hospitalizations because of COVID-19 has been on the drop. For patients visiting our designated clinics as well as the A&ED, the number has not been affected significantly by the first phase resumption. These data, after the 8th of January, shows that the resumption of cross-boundary travel has not worsened our epidemic control. We understand that the number of travelers will definitely rise after the resumption of cross-boundary travel. We will work hard to ensure that the public health care system is not affected adversely. The hospital authority will maintain close liaison with healthcare services providers to ensure that we have the capacity to cope, including a steady supply of medical supplies and also formulation of effective response plan, and also activation of various beds deployment scheme based on the developments of the epidemic, as well as making use of telemedicine, consultation. The hospital authority has stepped up its level of services to support confirmed patients in the community. More than 70 GOPCs are offering treatments to confirmed COVID patients, including prescription of oral COVID medications. Quotas would be reserved for high-risk patients. Most private clinics and hospitals are offering treatments to COVID-19 patients as well. At this stage, private doctors can engage in direct procurement with the pharmaceutical companies for the 2 authorized oral medications. And also doctors registered under the e-health system can obtain COVID-19 drugs procured by the governments for free prescription to eligible patients. We will endeavor to ensure that our healthcare medical system can cope while we are resuming normalcy, and we will protect people's health after the boundaries are reopened. Secretary for Education. Thank you, Chief Executive, and good morning. The Education Bureau has been in close liaison with the education sector. We have been working with other departments to provide facilitation for the return of cross-boundary students. In response to the measures just announced, we plan to allow cross-boundary students to come back to Hong Kong for face-to-face lesson in an orderly manner in 2 phases. In terms of the time frame, at the initial stage of the cross-boundary resumption, there will be very busy traffic. And also considering the resumption of full-day in-person classes for different students, we have decided that in 2 days after the resumption, that is starting the 8th of February, cross-boundary secondary students would be arranged to come back to Hong Kong for school. For primary students and also kindergarten students, they will begin to come back to Hong Kong for face-to-face lessons starting the 22nd of February. The Education Bureau supports the Education Bureau and also stakeholders consider that it is very important to make advanced preparation, including getting the relevant permits and also come back to Hong Kong for schools in an orderly and progressive manner. That would be the safest arrangement. The Education Bureau would notify parents via schools of the customs clearance arrangements and also the transport arrangements at different boundary control points so that students can select the most appropriate control points for crossing the border. In terms of the travel documents, we have been reminding students since last year that they should renew their travel permits to prepare for the reopening of a boundary. And also we have been starting June last year, we have been reminding schools with cross-boundary students to remind the students to renew their permits. With the new arrangements, we will also provide facilitation measures for cross-boundary students to get a travel permit, including allowing schools to apply on behalf of the students for renewal of permits. If the documentations are proper, then the immigration department will provide expedited handling for these applications. For cross-boundary students, we want to facilitate the movement of cross-boundary coach buses, so we will work with other departments to handle application by school buses operators. Now, because of the long hiatus in schooling in Hong Kong by cross-boundary students, a lot of adjustments and adaptation will be needed. We have reminded schools to pay attention to the emotional and mental health of students to help them adjust to the resumption of schooling. The Education Bureau has created a dedicated website to help cross-boundary students to adjust to the resumption of in-person school life. They include guidelines and advice on how to expand the circle, as well as how to adjust to school life. We are looking forward to cross-boundary students to come back to schools in Hong Kong and enjoy an exciting school life. The Education Bureau will continue to maintain close liaison with the schools as well as stakeholders to offer support for cross-boundary students. Thank you.
跟住落嚟咧係提問嘅。
Now the floor is open to questions. If you wish to ask questions, please raise your hand. And when it's your turn to speak, please use the microphone that we pass you. First, please identify your organization and also please limit yourself to 2 questions each. The gentleman on the left, on the front row. Good morning, Chief Executive and Secretaries. I'm from the Central TV. Now, after full resumption of normal travel, or rather, as we prepare for full resumption of travel, what has been done by different departments, and what about the frontline staff? How do you coordinate their effort? Yesterday, second question, you launched the Hello Hong Kong global campaign yesterday. What do you think are the unique advantages of Hong Kong that will bring visitors to Hong Kong? Now, you want to welcome visitors from all parts of the world, so what preparation have you done for that? Thank you. On planning for the full resumption of travel. Now, I reported to duty at Beijing, and then the central authorities gave me instructions that we could start making the preparation. And so immediately we set up the coordination group on resumption of normal travel, chaired by the Chief Secretary for Administration. Now, the CS, the second highest ranking official in the SARG government, leads this group, and there are 15 other bureau heads and department heads involved. So that's why the whole SAR government is fully dedicated to the task, and at every step of the way we've been working carefully, taking care of all the details. Now, in this whole exercise, I'm grateful to the CS and his team for considering several points, because I've set certain targets. First, it must be orderly, safe, and smooth resumption. We see that the target was achieved on the 8th of January. Why did we manage that? Because we made adequate preparations. Secondly, we've strengthened the safety coefficient. And thirdly, we've done sufficiently in terms of information dissemination. In fact, we keep improving this aspect of work too. And then in the design of the whole system, we were able to consider fully the urgent needs after resumption of travel. So that's why initially we set a period of 8 weeks for the quota arrangement. So we let people know that half of the population, some 3.6 million, will be able to go to the mainland, so they don't need to become too anxious, because we don't want everybody to rush at the border at the same time. It won't be good because it actually may not meet the travel needs of individuals, but then also there could be problems arising at the BCP. So we don't want to rush, and that's why we made early dissemination of information. And then I'm grateful to the mainland authorities. Just before the Chinese New Year, almost every day, the CS and his colleagues were in discussion with the mainland authorities. If necessary, they would make adjustment. If there's need for disseminating information, they would do so at once. And we heard different demands. For example, for children under 3 years of age, can we have discussion with the main authorities to remove the testing requirement? And after discussion, the requirement was removed. And secondly, we heard the voices of the people about express rail service. And so that's why the Transport and Logistics Bureau had daily discussion with the mainland authorities. And so eventually we were able to resume our service. So where we could increase the quota, we tried to do so. Before the Chinese New Year, we knew there would be strong demand. So after discussion with the mainland authorities, we increased the daily quota places. So we could see that if people wish to travel the mainland, they will be able to do so. And so that's why I believe the arrangement met my requirements. I always say that if we want any operation to be successful, we have to make quick decisions and policies, and we have to have precise implementation. I'm grateful to all colleagues for dedicating themselves to the task. In fact, during the holiday, they never took a break. They worked really diligently. I'm grateful to them, and also grateful to all the residents, authorities on the mainland, in particular the Guangdong provincial government and the Shenzhen municipal government, for working very hard on these issues too. Another point, now we are going for full resumption of travel. We're also planning for full economic recovery, and so just yesterday we launched this major global campaign to bring visitors from overseas to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has many advantages. First of all, we have a very nice scenic spots and tourist attractions, including the Palace Museum. The M+ Museum too is very much well praised. And then we have other we have theme parks, we have country parks, we have many different types of tourist destinations, and they are all very popular. Hong Kong is also a city of mega events. Many mega events are held here. Just yesterday, I mentioned a number of events such as the marathon, the Hong Kong Sevens, and so on. And also Hong Kong is a well-known MICE venue. It's also center of East cultural exchanges between the East and the West. And also we are ranked the freest economy in the world. So many events and conferences can be held in Hong Kong. We're also giving out 500,000 air tickets. I believe that would be very appealing. So what are we doing in terms of preparation here? We're all ready. We're all well prepared. Friends from the tourism sector, also for those promoting trade, conventions, and so on, and even the airport is all ready. So that's why yesterday, at the launch ceremony, we had colleagues from the Trade Development Council, the Airport Authority, the Tourism Board, and so on. In fact, for our catering, retail sectors, and even everyone in Hong Kong, I'm sure they're all ready to promote Hong Kong. So for every visitor who comes to Hong Kong, they will be able to feel our vitality and our hospitality. Hong Kong will certainly be a good host. So for our economic activities in 2023, and for the major exchanges and between the people and of trade, I'm very confident about all that. Thank you. Second question at the far end over there, please. I'm from the Hong Kong Economic Times. Two questions. First one about prevention infection control. Now, you confirm that the epidemic is under control even with the resumption of cross-boundary travel. But are there other measures to prevent imported cases? How can you convince the public that the pandemic will not go up again? And when, for all the facilities, say in the Loop area, when will the normal uses be resumed? If they are to be demolished, this is a waste of money. I think you've asked two questions already. Well, I'll answer part of your questions, and then I'll invite the Secretary for Health to tell you more about infection control. Now, for our epidemic control measures, we want to do things in an orderly manner with risk under control. The measures must also be science-based and be precise. This has been our policy since the assumption of office for this government, and we could see the results. So it's been effective. Now, starting from the 8th of January, we started resumption of cross-boundary travel, and we've been monitoring very closely the epidemic situation at the moment. The Secretary for Health could share with you more data. So you can see that for our policies, they've been effective. And then we've also enhanced the safety coefficient. By that, it means that we are doing more preparation than usual. Because we have raised the safety coefficient, so we have we are deploying more resources with better results. In terms of manpower deployment too, because of the higher safety coefficient, we also make sure that we will have full and rapid response as necessary. So in terms of policy making implementation, we are actually very much confident. And another point, I said before that because of the need for community isolation facilities and so on at the peak of the pandemic, so all these many facilities were provided, and now I've invited the Financial Secretary, the Deputy Financial Secretary, to review all these facilities and see how we should deal with them in light of the current situation. First, we decide on the reserve capacity. As you can see, we are now able to control the epidemic. Of course, there could be unexpected circumstances around the world, or there could be a new disease or new pandemic around the world. And these are, scenarios that we cannot predict, but based on the current data and trend, we will have to decide on the size of the reserve capacity. And then for facilities that we no longer need, we will have to consider what to do with them. For example, some of the facilities could perhaps be converted to other short-term uses. Some perhaps could be used as youth hostels, or perhaps some facilities could be used for short-term activities such as youth activities, exchange activities, and so on. Now, we had to provide a large number of facilities in an emergency at the time, so these facilities were built for emergency purposes. And by going by that standard, it means we will have to spend much in repair and maintenance if we want to keep the facilities. So that's why we have to consider how we could make use of these facilities effectively without spending large amount of money on repair and maintenance. And then also at certain locations, you have to be careful if it's a rainy or typhoon season. Maybe there could be flooding, or the risk of flooding at least. So maybe it's not suitable to use certain facilities on a long-term basis if they're in such locations. So that's why the Deputy Financial Secretary will have to review each and every facility to see if there could be other suitable uses. So after he's completed the review, he will submit a report for my consideration. And then, of course, we'll let you know what you will do with these facilities. Next, I invite the Secretary for Health to answer your other question. Thank you for your question. This is very important. It's a good question, actually. It shows exactly that the virus has not vanished altogether. So we still need to bear this in mind. Then in the course of development of the pandemic, we see that the viruses have mutated, and then our immunity barrier has been enhanced, and also the response capacity in the healthcare system and in the government as a whole has been enhanced. So that's why starting from from July 2022, we have started adopting an orderly and gradual approach in leading Hong Kong back to normalcy. And so that's a strategy we adopt as we made adjustments to our control measures. That is, we would first collect sufficient data and see if the data supports further relaxation every step of the way. So, for example, starting from the 8th of January, we've resumed cross-boundary travel. We've looked at the number of arrivals, and we see that it's not affected our epidemic. And then from the 6th of February, when there is full resumption of travel, we will continue to monitor closely the epidemic situation. As for our healthcare system, public healthcare system that is, the Department of Health, the hospital authority, or even in the private sector, private hospitals, private clinics, and so on, they will all be enhancing their capacity. So we could respond, therefore, should there be fluctuations in the infection numbers. For example, at the beginning of at the end of December and early January this year, we've seen surge in arrivals, and still we have been able to provide normal services. So when there's a surge in service demand, but still we were able to provide normal service. Thank you. If I may remind you, please limit yourself to 2 questions. Next, please, on the right, the third row, the one at the far end, please.
CMP, the first question, why is the pre-departure RAT still necessary when there is practically no enforcement? Isn't it unfair if Hong Kong residents are no longer required to report their RAT results and do any isolation, but visitors have to do so? And the second question, would the government reconsider setting up an independent commission of inquiry to investigate the handling of the pandemic or any other way that would ensure the transparency? Because, Mr. Lee, when you dismissed the calls to set up the COI, there are actually backlash from society and many experts do not agree. Will you consider that? Thank you.
Well, first of all, the RAT requirement is only applicable to people that visits Hong Kong returns to Hong Kong or come to Hong Kong to visit. We require an RAT for the purpose of ensuring that, any risk from overseas can be monitored and controlled. This is really for the benefit of controlling the spread of the disease. It's really for ensuring that the public health is protected. It's for the people's overall good. Obviously, I want to resume everything to normalcy as soon as possible, but I have to do it in a balanced and controlled manner, as I have already said many times, so that I don't have to roll back. The reason for keeping it for a while is also that the normal travel resumption with the mainland will involve a lot of people traveling across the boundary, and that will be a big number. And in order to ensure that we will be able to control the risk, then I think we should keep the RAT requirement for people coming into Hong Kong from overseas so as to protect the overall public health of the people, for the good of the people. But I will review it after a period of time, particularly after we have resumed normal travel with the mainland, for a period and looking at the data, and then we'll decide the next step. Regarding the suggestion of doing an independent investigation, my position has been made very clear. We should do lesson learning, but we have been doing lesson learning since day one of the assumption of office of this government. And we are doing it very regularly. Otherwise, we will not have introduced different measures to resume normalcy. And this is a continued exercise and will be done by responsible departments. If there's a need for any opinions from other people, then of course the responsible department will talk to those people. If you look at what we have done, this continuation of lesson learning is the doctrine of this government in the different policy areas. So in order to ensure that we will be able to deal with future challenges, future risks in regard to this disease, we will be summarizing and also for those success measures, we will regularize it and update it into our guidelines and response plan. That will be most practical and also most effective. I also want to focus the energy of the government on developing the economy. So I'm doing this in a very pragmatic manner. So on the one hand, we'll do our lesson learning, we'll update what has been good practices and successful practices into our guidelines so that we'll be able to deal with future challenges. And at the same time, the government will be working to ensure that Hong Kong developed economically and also to ensure that we remain competitive. My position is very clear. We'll do lesson learning, but we'll do lesson learning as we always do within the government in the course as we deal with this pandemic. And also, I must also emphasize, there are a lot of people who disagree with the idea of doing an independent investigation and agree with my position.
Next question, please. The lady in the middle. Good morning, Chief Executive and Secretaries. The first question about Liantang Hengyun Wai BCP. This is a key project, and this is the first time the border control point is in operation. So what discussion has been made with the Shenzhen authority about the Hello Hong Kong promotion campaign? Yesterday, we have heard a lot of measures to attract visitors from the mainland overseas. So after the full resumption of cross-boundary travel, are there any measures to attract mainland travelers in particular? I will take your second question first, and for your first question, I would invite the Secretary for Security to answer it. Full resumption of cross-boundary travel is the aspiration of many people in the mainland, and as well as those who are working in the mainland. They would like to come to Hong Kong because we have a number of attractions. We are a very robust city, and there are lots of commercial and business opportunities. We are a very diversified place. We have a lot of tourist attractions, including the Palace Museum, the M+, and a lot of mega events happening, including Hong Kong 7 and also Hong Kong Marathon. We are also a MICE hub in the region. In terms of MICE tourism, we are also very attractive. Friends in the mainland can apply for a free air ticket. tourism is gradually resuming in the mainland, there will be mainland tour groups to Hong Kong. So in terms of individual traveling and also tourist group traveling, there will be a lot of opportunities. In terms of the retail industry, catering, convention and exhibition, and commerce, the sectors are ready. Because of the full resumption of cross-boundary travel, I will also lead a team of government officials to visit the mainland. Beside Beijing, we will conduct visits in the GBA, and we will conduct study visits with the hope to play a more important role in terms of developing the GBA. In the process, we will promote communication and interaction between the people of Hong Kong and the mainland in terms of business cooperation as well as a cultural exchange. There will also be student exchange activities. In general, there will be a comprehensive campaign in terms of promoting exchange activities with the mainland. After the resumption of cross-boundary travel, we will reach out to our counterparts in the mainland in an effort to create new opportunities. We welcome friends in the mainland as well as people working in the mainland to come to Hong Kong to explore the opportunities or simply just to chill out and enjoy the time in Hong Kong. Now, may I invite the Secretary for Security to talk about the arrangements as the Liantang Hung Yuen Wei control point. Thank you, Chief Executive. Now, the Liantang Hung Yuen Wei BCP is very important in terms of cross-boundary travel in the GBA. It is a strategic position. In terms of the east-in, east-out travel, it is very important and convenient for travelers to travel to Guangdong and Shenzhen East. Now, in terms of the comprehensive strategy, it is a very important BCP. And also, it is very important in terms of cargo customs clearance and also travelers clearance. And it is also a BCP with huge capacity. Besides public transport means, travelers can drive their own cars and park the vehicles in the car park and then go through customs clearance. They can also make use of a designated pedestrian tunnel to cross the boundary. This is a brand new facilitation measures. So this is the advantage of using the Liantang Hung Yuen Wei BCP. Thank you. Next question, please.
To the left at the back, the lady there. I'm from Singtao Daily. Good morning. First question. So next week there will be full resumption to normal arrangement. Now for community testing stations and vaccination centers, when will they be abolished and when will there will be full resumption of high-speed rail service? Now, the CE said you wouldn't do a commission of inquiry, but then some experts have asked for a commission of inquiry. So I want to ask the Secretary for Health, what is your view on that as a professional? Chief Executive. Well, many people have different views. Some may have their own ideas and some agree with me entirely. So I think we have to look at it in an objective manner first. I will invite the Secretary for Transport and Logistics to tell you more about the operation of the express rail service, and then I'll invite Mr. Secretary for Health to tell you about PCR testing facilities. First, on express rail service, as you know, it's been suspended for 3 years. In mid-January, we started resuming some express rail services to Guangzhou and so on. You might recall before the pandemic, long-distance rail service went all the way to Beijing, Shanghai. To the east, it went to Fujian, and then to the west, went to Chengdu, Chongqing. So there were many, many destinations. If I recall correctly, there were over 50 cities served by our express rail service. So that's why we would need a little bit more time to talk to the relevant units and cities on the mainland on the resumption of express rail service. We've started discussion with them. And as to how long it will take, it depends on the both sides. But we will work proactively to resume service as soon as possible. Secretary for Health. Well, earlier when I answered the question, I said that the virus has not vanished altogether. We still have COVID in the community, is still of concern to us. The World Health Organization has also stressed that the COVID remains a public health concern, a public health emergency of international concern. Now, as for PCR test, we still need to provide services on various fronts. Now, for example, people have to travel overseas. Many countries still require PCR tests before departure, so we have to maintain the service. It's a paid service. And then for target groups, say those working at residential care homes and hospitals, there is need for us to provide services for whoever who wants to take the test. They should be able to take the test. As to when we will make adjustment, it will depend on the pandemic. As for vaccination, it's of course priority task for us. Now we are able to return to normalcy. Now, after all these years, vaccination is made a significant contribution. So we need to keep our vaccination service. And there are signs to show that there may be a need for regular vaccination to fight the COVID virus. As to how regularly we should get vaccinated, we'll leave it to the expert community to make recommendations. In other countries, for example, in Singapore, they suggest getting vaccinated every 6 months. And in the US, it's annual vaccination. So therefore, we will have to keep up with our vaccination service. Of course, we'll make adjustments in the light of the epidemic. Now, you asked about my views on Commission of Inquiry. I fully agree with the Chief Executive. Now, we have kept improving our measures. We also review our anti-epidemic measures in a periodic manner. This is a direction adopted all around the world. Before, I have described this approach as grouping along the way. By grouping along the way, that means that we could not, make advanced plans. We have to see how the epidemic evolves before we decide what to do. I'm sure in future, when there is another new virus or another new pandemic, we may most likely have to adopt the same approach. That is, every time there may be a different virus, different health concern, and we will have to, respond accordingly. Now, in the healthcare sector, as we treat patients, when COVID is like a major illness for the entire world, and in that the treatment process, we will keep making improvements and enhancements. So it's really not a question about doing independent inquiry at any particular stage. So that's all I'd like to say. If I may add, we've had this pandemic for 3 years. There is not the best practice or approach that's acceptable by all. Secondly, we need to take stock of experience so we're able to respond to new challenges in future. My view is the same as that of others. We have to do that. It's just the approach that is different. So it's a matter of how we take stock of experience. My approach is that we will keep taking stock of experience. We will keep enhancing our measures. We believe that is the most pragmatic and effective way. It is also the most cost-effective. So there are different approaches, but it doesn't mean that the outcome will be very much different. Because we keep reviewing the situation, we keep enhancing the measures. So therefore, we will be able to do better on three fronts compared to other approaches. First, decisions are quick. Two, implementation is precise. And three, we will see effective outcome. So it doesn't matter what measures or recommendations we have, we need to achieve these three targets. Otherwise, we cannot really address any crisis. So we need to do these three things, and then we need to have a system that will allow us to achieve these three targets. That's important. And also we have another advantage. Under one country, two systems, we could work together with different departments of the mainland in terms of resources provision. So with the advantage of one country, two systems, we are able to leverage on the advantage and resources of other cities. They could share these resources with us. In the past 7 months, we kept taking stock of our experience. And I believe we have since come up with the most effective measures. And I'm very much confident that we will be able to face future challenges too, adopting the same approach. It's almost time. The last question to the right on the third row, the lady in white. I'm from Hong Kong 01. About removing the PCR test requirement in the CSB website, we see that the most of the imported cases came from mainland, although you said it's just 60% earlier. Now, so we are talking about the place that may import the most cases to us, so you relax the requirement, but then for other places with lower risk, you are maintaining the RAT requirement, so what is the rationale for that? Second question. Now, you said as long as you're able to make quick decisions, good, but during SARS, the recommendation was that there's a need to set up a CAP or DHC to monitor the epidemic, or there's a need to prepare more resources. So as long as you could do that, it's fine. Is it the case that you don't need to consider the hardware and software for you to be better prepared for the next epidemic? I think you have asked two questions. When there is an unknown virus in future, can you be sure that there won't be again, elderly patients, freezing and passing away at hospitals and so on? I think with any major healthcare crisis, or with any major crisis, actually, we have to consider the risk, the various factors. There is not a single solution for all scenarios. Now, you could come up with 100 proposals, but then there could be another new scenario that requires another different 100 solutions, for instance. So we are faced with a crisis. We need to respond accordingly, and we have to consider all the relevant factors, and these factors could be different in each case. And we are talking about returning to full normalcy, and also, keeping in tandem with the world in that respect. We've actually seen good experience to learn from overseas. Here we're talking about risk being under control. We all know that the virus is still with us, but we know that the virus is less dangerous now. Many people actually are asymptomatic even if they're infected. So that's why we have set up a system to make it one of the upper respiratory tract diseases. This is also the direction for most other countries around the world. So under the circumstance, we are returning to normalcy, but it doesn't mean that we don't face any risk. In other countries, all of a sudden they may come up with measures that every country is trying to strike a balance between risk control and return to normalcy. So we have now announced a full resumption of cross-boundary travel because we want to respond to the aspirations of most people in the community, and also we are moving in a direction of putting risk under control. So we do have imported cases, as we mentioned earlier. In every country, they have imported cases, but on the whole, the risks are under control. Now, everyone believes Hong Kong should return to normalcy, and so we want to do so in an orderly manner in responding to people's aspirations. So this is how we look at the matter. And we can see that in the different phases of our work, we are able to make a suitable judgment as we respond to the wish of the public. Thank you. That's the end of the press conference. Thank you.